Again. Hi folks, welcome to episode 4 of Two Pugscast. As always, I'm Ray Roche, one half of Two Pugs.
And I'm Jim Lavery. We're number 4 of our podcasts. Thank you very, very much for everybody who viewed episode 1. I think episode 2 is up this evening. Is that right?
I think so, yeah.
Thanks very much. Ray and I are just feeling our way here. We're getting to learn the ropes and everything. This is all new to us. So any tips, any questions, any suggestions, please stick them in the comment section. We really appreciate it, and share. This is the modern plea. Like and subscribe and spread the word. We really appreciate it. We're staggered. Actually, I don't think I know the amount of people that have hit our videos and watched it. I think
the first one had 60 something views so far, which is nice. Yeah. As people find it, they'll go back and watch the first one, the second one, etc.
Yeah.
As long as you're saying something people want to hear or something fresh and new, And believe it or not, I picked up so much from watching people on YouTube. They do tutorials, they do things like that. They get interviewed across the computer, and you pick up little bits and pieces that people forget to tell you when you ask them, how do I do this? And they'll say it in passing then, and that fills in the blank.
Yeah.
Like I've learned a few tips on lettering recently by watching a couple of things on YouTube that had nothing to do with lettering, but someone actually told an anecdote about it. And I went, oh yeah, it clicks. These sort of things are very important.
They're really good. Yeah. This kind of thing, it's hard for people really to appreciate. I remember being young, 13, 14, 15, and trying to figure out, like, getting comics and poring over them and see. And I thought that you had to, like, almost like layers. You had to draw the buildings in first, and then the people on top, and then the letters and boxes on top of it and everything. So we never had anything, no internet. Books were even bookstores. So stuff like that's just invaluable, just to move things along, and shortcuts. We just live for shortcuts.
Well, the downside these days is people are kind of told you need to have Photoshop, you need to have Illustrator, you have to have Clip Studio Paint, and it has to be the special deluxe edition. You have to have 1,000 brushes in your repertoire. They're nice to have, unless you can use these things to the fullest. They can be expensive toys, and I really believe people should learn to do it by hand first, and then go on technology. But it's so easy to buy technology these days and just jump in. But the problem there is you limit yourself to that square, to that way of thinking. But then I hear what you say. These days, people understand more about layers. With these programs, you can have many layers and be working on something and have that fade away and work on the rest. It's fantastic, but there is a downside to it. If you can jump into technology at the wrong time, and be very expensive. It can be just a tool that sits in the corner. It has to.
Can also be.
Go on.
Yeah, sorry. It can also be really limiting, and a lot of illustration can look similar.
Yeah.
It all has this digital polish to it, and you're always restricting yourself. This is it. Look, I've got my pen. My drawing board's covered in ink. I've got a piece of paper, and I've got an old school pencil. And it's hard to what's the best way to say it? It's hard to know. You'll never know unless you try everything. I was really lucky. I did a foundation course in art, and we did everything: printmaking, photography, ceramics, everything, graphic design. We did the lot, and it was terrific. You get dirt under your fingernails, you got paint, your clothes are covered, and you learn to make marks. And they never talked about drawing. They talk about making marks or these kind of things that try and get you out of your own headspace. And it's just all these tools in your arsenal, spray paints and sanding things back and all of this. And plus it's just enjoyable, So the digital tools are terrific. They're fast. They just speed the process up, and it's the modern way, definitely. But if you're beginning, especially when it's anatomy, I haven't done a life drawing class in a few years, but I did loads of life drawing, and the number one teacher for me is the human body. We did a life drawing class, and every week we had at least one life drawing class, and if we didn't, we'd get our mates would sit around, would draw the human body, and once you've not mastered, but you get the fundamentals of that, and doing it at speed on a piece of paper, pen, it's hard to. It's like muscle memory. You build up this muscle memory, and it's totally different from drawing on a piece of glass. I'm derailing things, but you've reminded me of a few things. Yeah, if you've got a piece of paper, and I do it with the kids, and a pencil, you're off to the races. That's you. You're gone.
Now, the thing about technology is they have drop-down menus, and it can limit your thinking that I have to use that menu and that sub-menu, and that gives me 5 menus there, and that gives me this. And they click, and they get an effect, and something works for them. And you see it duplicate a lot in different comics. As you say, a lot of it starts to look the same.
Yeah.
There was a guy, Declan Shalvey, he's like a fairly well-known, I mean, he's drawn like for DC, Marvel, Moonlight, everything like, and Irish guy. He's done a few books of his own here in Ireland. And we went to see him at a museum here, himself and 3 other lads were talking about painting with light, light and dark. And someone asked the question, should you teach this in school, in secondary school? And he said, no. He said, people have to get an education. They have to go and pick the course they want. And hopefully it's like a course that gives you everything, not just focus on one thing, draw comics. There's nothing wrong with drawing comics. I mean, hey, that's why we're here.
Yeah.
But you can see on his stuff, when he draws something, he draws from loads of different elements of art and puts those disciplines together. And you kind of know a cover of his when you see it, because there's 15 things happening, and the cover tells the story. So I get what he's saying. He said, get out there, get the experience, get your degree in art, then decide what you're going to do with it. But these days, people want to jump straight into a comic. And there are courses out there, and a lot of people, like, I watched a Hispanic guy. He did this from scratch. He did a Spider-Man with a cityscape. And he said, I can do this because I've done this 1,000 times already. He doesn't work for anybody, but he works for himself. But he can sit down and he can do Spider-Man from the middle, from the mask. He can draw that out and do a whole cover. But he can't do sequentials. All of his stuff is all of his stuff is covers. It's pop art, it's poster stuff. Can't do sequentials. Hasn't figured out like how to get something from A to B and the gutter in between. Which is a hugely important thing. Like, I mean, it's about sequence, it's about moving the eye along. Can't do that. But he can take an image in his head and just draw it straight. And he just does everything, goes all in one corner, and then the next corner. It's fabulous. But as I say, you can limit yourself without realizing it. You have to be all rounded. I mean, I could write one story and then do nothing else but to write that story over and over again. If I didn't read stuff all the time, if I wasn't looking at movies all the time and getting ideas and figure out how to tell a different kind of story, I'd still be writing solo, which would make me very happy, but it wouldn't take me where I want to go. I have so many different kinds of stories I want to tell.
Everybody, so this week we've covered in the first couple of episodes some of Two Pugs' back catalogue, or current catalogue, I should say. First week we covered, did we do a general, and then we did SSDD. Last week we did Witch. And this week we're going to talk about City of Klowns, which this is a trip. So let's get into it, and I want to go into it this way, Ray, if you don't mind, because you're the genesis, the generator of this idea. What I wanted to ask you first of all is, or what would take you now to think of yourself as an artist, a writer? How would you describe yourself? Would you think of yourself in those terms?
No, not at all.
No,
not even as a writer. I'd say,
really,
I put the words on this, I wrote this, I created this, Robert. I don't think of myself as a writer at all.
Really?
Yeah.
Because now you've got like I'm sure you have over a dozen books out, haven't you? Over.
Yeah, but it's that imposter syndrome thing, you know. When I finally do the book that I'm totally happy with from the writing side of things, because I always feel I could have done more. I could have put more story in there. When I finally do that, I might say, yeah, I'm a writer. But no, I make comics. That's what I do. You know, I don't.
Here's the thing. Here's something that I heard years ago is somebody had asked Alan Moore about being a writer, and he goes, "Oh, I think you find it on YouTube." Somebody asks him about being a writer, and he says, "Well, you're asking, a double-edged question there. One is people ask me about being a writer, and what they mean is, how do you be a successful writer? How do I break into an industry or something like that?" And I think he told some story about what's her name? You know, the woman. She's a model and she's got big boobs and she writes horsey books and she's married to pop stars.
Was it Katie Price? Katie Price?
Yes. Jordan?
Yeah.
Jordan. And he said, this is Alan Moore talking. He said her book, she wrote a book about horses or something, and it was at the top of the Waterstones or something or other list. It sold a truckload. Yeah. Now he said, if you were asking me advice how to be Katie Price, I'm not the guy. I'm not the guy. If you're asking me to be a writer, and this is something I've heard, somebody said to me, I consider myself an artist. I have to do different things to earn money and everything, but I think of myself as an artist because of what I was taught, which was artist. You're an artist because you make art, not because you sell art or somebody commissioned you for an art. Writers write, bakers bake, artists bake art. So I always think of myself as an artist. And sometimes I'll make things out of clay. I've got some clay things that I've made, and I'll make different things. And so you're a writer. In my mind, you're a writer. I think of you as a writer because you write. You have a daytime job. Everybody does. Everybody's got a daytime job. But it's not how I think of you. I think, oh, Ray's a writer. That's how I think of you. And you're a writer because you write. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
Just for anybody else who's watching the podcast as well, that's my opinion. That's my 2 cents worth. If you consider yourself an artist, it's because you make art, or you're a writer or a singer because you sing or write. So, but you don't think you still have.
Stephen King did a book about writing, what it is to be a writer. And he talked about being in college, and he'd already sold a book and made some money at it. And the lecturer was being very, derogatory about it. It was a horror book, and his classmates were laughing. And the lecturer said something like, "So you think you're a professional?" He said, "Well, yeah, I got paid for it." So, if you get paid for something, that's who you are. That's what you are.
Yeah.
How you feel inside has a big part of that. You may never sell anything, but you may have a drawer full of manuscripts and think, "I'm a writer."
Yeah.
And agonize over life. But for me, I haven't written the thing that I could just put down on a table and go, "Yep, I'm done with this, walk away." I can't do better than that. Because if I'm doing a book and someone I know is doing a book similar, I won't do it. When I was doing Talking Gun a couple of years ago, one of my mates, Wayne Talbot, he said, "Hey, I'm doing a Western as well, a horror Western." And I went, "We can't both do horror Westerns." So I sort of put it on the back burner for a while, because I figured he'd do a good job of it. But then when he went in a different direction, then I went, "You know what? It's time to do it." With lockdown and everything else, I figured I'd never get a better chance. And but that's how I am. Like, if someone can do a better job than me, go for it.
Yeah. But what you're describing is the artist's mentality. When I got to the end of drawing City of Clowns, I wanted to go back to the start and do it all over again. I wanted to do it. Honestly, I just thought, and I go and look at something, go, "You're an idiot. Why did you do that?" And I can see, oh, for God's sake, I wish I'd have done. But so what you're describing, you have that artist's mentality. You've got to, and you're not happy, and you've got to force yourself to go on to the next thing.
Yeah.
You can't go back. You can't. It's a nightmare.
But if there's things I can fix, if I've done something and the lettering is wrong in some fashion, next time I reprint that, because I pay for the printing and everything else,
Yeah.
I say, no, I'm fixing that. So depending on what issue you get, what printing one you get, it'll be slightly different because I'm not happy with that lettering. I go over it again and go, I don't like that. So I try to improve on it. So the very next thing I do has slightly better lettering.
Yeah.
And my first dialogue I thought was sacrosanct, the very first comic. This will not change. I've written this. You cannot change this. And Michael, the artist, drew great pages, but didn't gel with my lettering. But I was adamant. You put the lettering in there. I open that book now and I go, I should have gone back and thought about it again, because lettering goes on last, and I could make it work better with the pictures. I learned that lesson from the first book. But that's what I do now. When I get it back from the printer, I look at it, because you really only look at things when they're printed.
When they're printed.
It's different in your mind. You're looking at it now as a reader, and the reader spots everything. When you're going through editing and all that, you're looking at certain things. But the physical book in your hand, it triggers something different in your reptilian brain to go, right, what's here? And that's what the reader does. They don't know anything else. They don't know from they're reading page after page. That's when you go through it and you go, yeah, there's a line that went up that way for a mountain, and then there's someone's elbow went that way. We probably shouldn't, because it looks like that mountain's gone into the elbow. Kind of way. That happens sometimes. I can't change that. That's going back to the art and changing the art. What I can do is I can put some dialogue or a box in there to break that up.
Yeah.
The next one I do. So next printing for that one, there'll be something different in there to take the reader's eye away from that. So I do that quite a bit because I had the luxury, because I produce it. If I was working with someone else, we'd be on to the next thing and forget the last one. You couldn't afford it. No one's going to do, fix those mistakes because they're there. That's it.
But those little refine things, that's part and parcel. You tweak and you're never satisfied. But if it's really important, I've got to change this next time in the next print. That's fine. But to say, like, for me, it would be just crazy to go, right, to finish this book. Otherwise, I'd never be done. I'd just never be done. There's a point where I have to abandon it and go, right, okay, this is the thing. So let's start. We're talking about City of Klowns this week. And let's start right at the cover. No, or maybe, do you want to maybe give an overview of where the idea came from?
Yeah.
The City of Klowns.
Yeah. Everyone knows I work for the police and I write police stories, SSTD, and I'm really, really proud of it. I think it's brilliant. And we did a great job on it. Like, it is brilliant. But I was talking to two young police officers one day at breakfast, and there was an older police officer sitting there having a cup of coffee, and he was sort of showing them the ropes. They were fresh off the boat at the start of COVID, and they hadn't finished their training yet. So one of them was getting his smashed avocado toast ready, and the other guy was sitting beside me, and the man said, "Are you the man that makes the comics?" And I said, "Yeah." And the other guy says, "So you made one about us, didn't you, the police?" The older police officer said, I was real offhand. He was flicking through his phone and drinking and slurping coffee and going, "Yeah, and he made us look like clowns." And I know for a fact this guy never read SSTD.
Right.
I know for a fact he didn't. And I took offense at that. Very proud of this SSDD thing and this phenomenon that we made. Hang on a second, you're not getting away with that. You want to look like clowns? I'll make you look like clowns. So Ray came home from work that night and sat at a typewriter, angry typing. And I did a script that was like Keystone Cops, come back in silent era, Max Sennett. He had these 20 police officers in a car, always crashing the car and falling out of the car, and mayhem. It was very fun. Those pictures were very, very funny. They starred in Charlie Chaplin movies, all sorts of things. But I made them look pretty bad. And, I sat and looked at it and I went, nah, I can't do this. Because my first draft was always very dark and very emotional. So I redid it and redid it a couple of times. Now, some of those scenes are going to end up in the next City of Clowns book I do.
There's going to be a follow. There's going to be a sequel.
Oh yes, yeah.
You heard it here first.
There's going to be three.
Three.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
So some of those scenes are going to make it in. So I sat down, and by the third draft, I had something that I could show people, And I remember telling my wife, the next thing is about clowns, and back then it was called Killer Clown Cops, KKK. And it was that for ages. And then my daughter said, you can't call it that. I said, why? She said, it's KKK. You know what that means? And I went, yeah. So we were brainstorming one night, and my wife was sitting over in the corner, and she comes up with great titles. And she said, now we've thrown out all these names, and she goes, call it City of Clowns with a K. And that was it. We had that title, and we figured, right, that's the finished kind of draft. I tidied it up a little bit, polished it a bit, and then I contacted you and said, next one's about clowns. I'll send it to you and see what you think. And you went, yeah, I'll draw this, right? Yeah. That's the background to it. It was such fun to do start to finish, and it wasn't a mean-spirited thing. I did a lot of research into actual clowns, where they came from in history, especially during the Renaissance period in Europe, which the clowns we know. But all over the world, every society has a clown and has a very important part to play. And unfortunately, when Renaissance Italy and Europe coalesced, there was a lot of principalities who used clowns as spies and sometimes assassins. When they coalesced under one rule, they became the countries we know today. They had no more use of those kind of tactics. They had armies. They had actual spies. So, and militias in police, metropolitan militias became what we know today, like John Peel created the Peelers, still in the police force. And that was the model for everything else after that. So clowns fell out of favor. They became something less important in life, Once one time, a clown could travel freely anywhere, was never be stopped, Didn't need a passport. And clown lore, they have their own hierarchy, They have their own way of insulting each other, And one of the lesser valued clowns is a rubber chicken, because they use a rubber chicken to make noise, right? Nothing clever about that. So a stupid clown is a rubber chicken. So in the book, they call people rubber chickens. I found loads of these things, and they had secret societies and meetings and all sorts of things, and they had their own languages. And there was just so much of it there that it became part of that society that I was making in the book. Instead of the police, they were clowns. And I didn't want to just put a police officer in a clown suit. There's a movie that people get called Sergeant Kabuki Man, which is a real low budget trauma movie from the 90s, I think. And this guy is done up in full Japanese regalia kabuki, running around the streets of San Francisco. And no one takes any notice of him being dressed like this, And it's a low budget B movie, it's a C&D movie. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted it to be completely enmeshed in society. That we never had police. We had clowns, and they took over as the police. And that's the background for City of Clowns. Like, I found the story and took off. I wanted to sort of tie it in with this multi-dimensionality I have, this idea that if you had enough power, you can push a hole through society, through the universe, into the next version of the Earth, or whatever's next in the multiverse. And in this universe, clowns are police, and police are clowns. In the next book, because they're clowns, the antithesis of a clown is a stand-up man, the straight guy. Right? Straight guy. When you had like Abbott and Costello and Morecambe and Wise, one was always straight, not telling the jokes. The other guy telling jokes. And the next book will be about a very strict society where Britain never lost any wars. Queen Victoria only had one child. with a daughter who had another child who was a daughter, and they ruled the world because Britannia ruled the waves, but they put a hold on technology. There's no aircraft, because Britannia rules the waves and they rule the world.
Right.
And they push forward into this society to have this universe of clowns. And I had this idea that this mad scientist, something would happen to him, and he'd figure out a way of using a different kind of psychic power to punch the hole to bring people through. And the next one's going to be the straight men. They're the police force in that universe, and they don't laugh.
You don't know.
No.
That's fascinating. That's really, really fascinating. And what has come through is with all your creations, all the work, it's like looking at reality slanted. It's like a slanted look, or like, or half, you're like half perception, or looking through your fingers or something. All the things are familiar,
Yeah, everything looks familiar, but it's not.
Yeah, everything's familiar, but it's just got a slant. It's just got a different look. Yeah, it's terrific. It was just fun. Small press and independent comics and everything, you will get stuff like this. You'll get, and similarly in manga, you'll get a story for anything. And I don't know where you get, enough with the, I love comics. I read any sort of comic, fantasy, superhero, supernatural, whatever, it doesn't matter. But it's only small press, I think you get something as outlandish, like a really unique voice, or perspective, or thing, or drawing. So whenever I got the script there, I went, right, okay, you got to just commit to this, and this is a trip, and we're going on a ride. Let's go for it. Tell me about let's talk about the cover then.
The cover, it was supposed to be Akira, the city in the background and the one man fighting whatever it is, and this image stuck in my head. That lone sort of person on their own with a gun, and they always have like a torn sleeve and stuff, and why is it got a torn sleeve? Like, but the image of it, if the neon light, the rain hitting them, I had this thing in my head that it's iconic, it's so, I'm taking myself seriously here. And the one thing we do in the book is we don't take that serious. But it was not super serious. I've got a gun, I'm going to use it. I am the man with the gun in this thing. The hero element, you just, when you took it and you made the background, so it's just, I can't describe it because it's just dashes of color, paint. It's impressionistic. And the guy at the front, he's line art, and he just jumps out that way. Hey, you did that, and that was fabulous. Now, like, I had that idea in my head, but like usual, you just took it and you went 5 miles beyond that.
Well, it always comes across. That's the thing. I as I said to you last week, if we were left to my own devices, I'd just be drawing. God knows what. I just don't even know. But I need somebody to come along with a script and an idea. And you described it really vividly, and I thought, right, okay. And I think I did a couple of iterations of it, but it was actually the color, and there was no. The only drawing is of the main character, and it was that iconic. It reminded me of Hong Kong cinema.
Yes.
Those old Hong Kong movies that you would get, and there'd be, I was thinking of Chow Yun-fat and the early movies that he did. That was my idea, that's what I imagined when you were describing it to me, coming through. So I had that image in my head, and then so it was just really clear. It's really easy whenever you're describing it. So I had some questions, and then your influences, because this could be. And there are definitely a couple of pages of straight up slapstick, like as you're saying, the Keystone Cops. But there's no other. I can't think of another comic like this, except for if you go for really young, like the Beano and stuff, pie in the face, that kind of thing. But that's not what what influenced you, or what tone were you going for? Because the story of it, the thrust of it, especially toward the end of the book, is a bit gruesome. It gets a bit gruesome at times. So it's not for young kids. It's not for little.
Well,
what was your influence? Tell me about your influence.
like you said, the slapstick clowns, you know, in a circus, but they're told there's a police badge, go and investigate a crime. So instead of a riot police public order unit, they have these guys with custard pies. They don't have tasers or batons. This is clown world. That was the tone. It was to take something very serious and then say, right, they're clowns. What would clowns do with it? And clowns can't be serious, although they take their job very serious. So I took everything that a police would do, like hostage negotiation, instead of being a class, it's actually a theatre to go to, and to see something acted out on stage, you know. And that was the tone. It was realistic, but light-hearted, and you have to think twice about what's happening, you know. And all the scenes are set up so that you can take it as a straightforward police story, or you can go, he's taking the mickey here, you know. I take it literally what people would say in a police story, and then I say, what would literally mean to a clown? And I challenge myself for the first page. We get a lot of people saying, we love how you introduce your characters. You know, the first time we see your characters is, wow, great. And I spent a lot of time working on that. And the first page is a 9-panel grid. If you want to show people there, people say it's so hard and so limiting to write a story like that. You have to be Alan Moore doing Watchmen and Dave making it work for him. Well, yeah, to take something and just put 9 little pictures and say, here you are, this is a guy in an interview room. You know, he's stuck in a bygone era, you know, because his clothes are maybe 70s and 90s, who knows? His hair is too long, you know. He's a businessman who thinks the rules don't apply to him. And we all know that, you know. It's a 9-panel grid. And I want to challenge myself to say, could you do a 9-panel grid, right, and tell a little story there as an introduction? And we get closer and closer to this guy, and he goes through a different emotion in each panel. You know, he starts off being bravado, and then he goes, "You made a mistake. Come on, we're all friends." And then it's plea bargaining. What can I do for you? Then he goes, "I've got important friends," and that's all set up. So he gets at the end, realize he's just a little man in the room. You know, he's gone beyond. He's taken a step he shouldn't have taken, and he's gotten involved in drugs, basically. And then we turn the page, and the surprise is there. But he says, "What will I do, you know, but you clowns?" And when he turns the page, they're clowns. And they do what clowns do. They try to trip him up. They offer him a case full of objects. And the number one thing he should have seen was mystery powder. That should be on top of his list. If he was innocent, that would be the first thing he knows. But he writes everything else down and leaves the powder out. And they go, "This is sneezy powder," you know, because I couldn't have it like it's cocaine, you know. I have to call it something else because it's clowns. And I made it it's a drug that gets you high, you feel great, but it's also a priapic. It's an aphrodisiac for men, right? It has an effect on the male body. Right? That was very important because you know yourself, I put something at the start of a book and then it pays dividends at the end. So that's what the whole thing is there to show people. It's not this drug, it has an effect. And one of the things I like doing is, you know, an Airplane, the movie, where someone says, you know, the poop has hit the fan. You see an actual fan, and then you see poop hitting it. I love that kind of joke. So we do that. The cop says, the boys of the lab have been examining this stuff, you know, and the boys of the lab are 2 clowns. You know? And that was one of my favorite little plans in the whole book, is where you do the lab and the guys examining the powder and testing it out. So good. But what we did was we went through versions of comedy, you know, slapstick comedy, puns, you know, the long con comedy where you say something and then it doesn't pay dividends 3 pages later. And then people go, "Oh yeah, right. We did all this in this book." I made a list of things I wanted to do, and I just peppered the whole thing with these things. this idea that you know, it's all about space. A clown car traditionally had 20 people in it, and they all climb out at one time, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of my favorite pages where they're taking this prisoner away, and the door opens. You have to stop, and this line of clowns come out, and you've drawn all these various different clowns. It was so funny when I got that page. I think it just said clowns walk out, you know? And then it's a tiny broom closet. You know, you get 2 people in there maybe, and like 6 of them walk out, and so you're a gigantic baby. That's what it is. We do a lot of jokes on size in this, you know.
Yeah.
The commissioner of police shows up, and in clown hierarchy, the top of the food chain was the jester who spoke to the king, had the king's ear. He was called the fool.
Right.
He got away with saying things no one else could say in court, and the courtiers would actually pay him to make someone look bad or to make someone look good, and whisper in the king's ear. So the top of our police food chain, the commissioner of police, is called the fool. Yeah, I will go away with that one. I don't know, but he shows up in his little tiny car, and because they're clowns, and we're told this room is tiny, but loads of clowns get out. He gets out, and he's a small person, and I just thought that is, for me, that's the payoff of the joke.
Yeah.
Of course, when he gets out, they're washing an elephant. What's the elephant doing there?
I don't want to give too much away, but I mean, it's so. Yeah. It's elephant. I was thinking, I don't know where this is going to go. As I'm reading, I was going, where is this? And then there's an elephant. I don't want to spoil it. It's just so much fun. It was so much fun to draw.
I'll let you know a secret. I'll let you know.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's a secret. Just you and me. Tell no one else. I said, put the elephant in the script to see would you draw an elephant. You did.
Really?
The elephant doesn't mean anything. I just wanted to see would you draw the elephant, and you drew the elephant.
Because I was reading along, I was going along and along. I go, okay, all right. Hang on, what? An elephant? Because do you know what I had to do? I had to go, right, okay. And I went off, my daughters have these, the animals, the toys animals, and they kept disappearing. I was walking around there, girls, I know you got an elephant in here. And they were all looking for it and everything. I got this flaming elephant. And I was here and I was drawing it for ages and ages. So much fun. And I thought, I don't know and then, well, I just can't spoil it. Not knowing where it was going to go. Literally, every time you turn a page, and here's a thing for people watching. I usually work in batches of 6 pages. In other words, I'll sketch up 6 pages, let you have a look for any changes and do that. So I'm always just working about 6 pages behind. All right, we've got some elephant going on. Literally not knowing. And I think by halfway through the book, I thought anything's going to happen. Anything's going to happen. I don't know what's coming up next. And then I really, really didn't. At the end of the book, it's a 180 turn, not a 180, but a 90-degree turn, left field. Yeah, so much fun. But there's a couple of things I wanted to add. Here's a thing I wanted to ask you. So this was the biggest book we did up to that stage. Yeah. The other books were normal 22 pages.
24. And
this one, how many?
I think there's 48.
So double, but we wanted to speed things along. Isn't that right? We want to kind of get things going on. And so you decided you wanted to have a crack at inking.
Yeah.
On this one. Now I can't tell. If I really, really scrutinize, I think I can tell what I think. Did you ink the whole thing? Did you?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. You marked where you wanted the blacks to be, and I went ahead with it.
Right, that's terrific. That's absolutely terrific. I can't believe you did that.
But I have to say,
because I remember at the start. Do you remember at the start you had like real doubts? You thought, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So your first. So okay, everybody, for anybody listening and watching and everything, you'd never done any inking before.
No.
And so what happened was we started off, I started sketching it out in pencils, and you went and got yourself the gear, the digital thing. We were talking about that at the beginning.
Yeah.
And you got yourself, was it a tablet or something to draw on? Or
Yeah, we got a Huey on canvas. Brilliant.
Yeah.
To start off with. It's
Yeah.
Middle of the range price wise, but it has a lot of starter things that make life easy for you. It's got some buttons on it for you to use. It's got a terrific stylus. You don't have to buy an expensive stylus. This one's pretty responsive, and there's levels of pressure and stuff like that. It's pretty good, but it was a learning curve, you know, like everything
it
else.
was a bit, well, that's what I was going to say. That's amazing. It's really amazing, because I think I sent you pencils first of all, and I think you were a bit hesitant or something, and then I think I just sent you, there were still pencils, but instead of, because they were done digitally, instead of using the pencil tool, I just used the ink tool instead. So there's still pencils, but they were darker, they were easier for you to see, right? It was just easier for you, and then you just went for it. You just got stuck in, and I think that's amazing. That's amazing.
The hardest thing
when you
was,
really shoot.
Tommy Kelly's, he's the clown checkerboard effect. That was really difficult to do, because especially when he crossed his arms and stuff, you had to figure out what should be black, what should be white. And it's tough. But,
that was
fun to do though, you know, it was great fun.
that for tips and tricks. When I was drawing the thing, for some reason, I don't, you know, I got in the checkerboard and I did that, and then I thought I've got to commit to that. And by about page 6, I thought, what have I done? What the hell have I done? Because although there's the paint bucket tool, you can just sort of keep track on, and then you've got to draw it the whole time. Yeah, that was. I think if I could change anything, that's what I'd change. I wouldn't have done the checkerboard thing. It was just time consuming, you know, the time consuming.
But having said that,
I'm still.
he's very eye catching. You know, he stands out. He's eye catching.
He's eye catching, yeah. And they've both
looks
got
like
that silhouette, you know.
He looks like a clown. He's got that Pagliacci sort of look about him, you know.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm just astounded. You did a really terrific job, really bang up job. That's amazing. For your first time, ain't getting anything, and you just get stuck into it. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So, although at the start, we were talking about the foundation of your skills of, you know, getting a piece of paper and pencil, and then off you go and seeing what works for you. In this instance, for inking anyway, the stylus just worked out for you, just the drawing screen.
Yeah. Well, I did a comic making course with PJ Holden. I have no skills whatsoever. I can't draw. And my favorite night was a night he gave us a Bristol board of Judge Dredd page, and we got to ink it with like Japanese ink and brush and things, and the markers and stuff like that. That was my favorite night. Took it home, finished the whole page over a couple of nights. It's great, loved it.
Yeah.
But inking, it's so time consuming. It takes a long time.
Yeah. I'm not terrific. I'm very, very hard on myself about my inking skills, and, you know, because it's an art in itself.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
you could spend your entire career just inking and, you know, and mastering it and everything. I'm trying to think of something that really stayed out for me to draw. Maybe we could get a sketch in before we run out of time or anything. But there's so much, and you forget. Beforehand, the whole traditions of, you know, you get the family of clowns doing the theatre. Yes, they're doing a play in the theatre and everything. So now I can see the different kinds of clowns coming through. There's the guy in drag, that clown. There's the guy with the vest on, you know, that kind of and then they actually go to court.
Yes.
I don't want to give it away, but they go to court, and, you know, we're talking about clowns here, and so there's a whole other aspect to it. It's almost like saying, you know, this is a performance,
Yes,
police and courts and criminal and the justice system. It's a big performance of.
exactly.
It's very theatrical. Yeah.
That was the idea. Yeah, yeah. You take things that people are familiar with about a courtroom and phrases people use when they're in court, and then you just apply the clown mentality to it, the logic, and opening arguments, closing arguments, kind of stuff. What would they be? You know, and for clowns, it's a very dramatic, physical thing to do. And one of the things is, French. There's a lot of French influences in that book. People have French names. The ranks of the guards, the police are like Bozo, Pierrot, etc. Full at the top. And a lot of things come from French clowns because they've lasted the kind of the longest unchanged. Up to the 90s. Mime artists would appear on what these shows on television where you win a prize, like Britain's Got Talent kind of thing. Mime artists were still doing that on television, and I stopped short of putting mimes in it as such because they're going to appear in the next one. I had to give a few clown types, stereotypes.
Yeah.
But a lot of the stuff there is French based. The guys speak a bit of French to each other, very, very rudimentary French. And it's all in sort of keeping with the logic. Once you have a logic point, everything flows from that.
Yeah. You mentioned that it's really clear. There's a sequence in it where they go into the sewer system or down below. And just as you were saying that, I was thinking of the French catacombs. Apparently, I've never been in Paris. Is that right? You can go underneath, which reminded me.
The big city, all the Vatican and Paris, they were all islands at one time. And they they literally outgrew the island they were on and took over. That's why so many of these big European countries have bridges on every side. They started off as a settlement on an island.
Right.
They eventually they became catacombs. There'd be waterways underground. Things had to move in and out of the city, and they couldn't do it through streets. You see medieval movies, things like that everything's going through streets on wagons. A lot of the stuff used to come in on barges beneath the city. That's the way it is.
Yeah, it's a fascinating. I mean, it's see, this is the thing. There's always these layers when you're writing. And it's something you said to me before. It takes you a couple of reads. Like people were reading this thing too, and then go back and reading it again because you do miss things, which is always the best. Comics, the best effect that comics have on you. That it's about controlling time and speed. That you've got to go back and re-absorb it because you miss stuff.
Yeah, I guarantee you get your money's worth from us. You'll read it through once and go, that was nice. Read it through again, know what's coming, and then you'll start seeing things. And the enjoyment the second time around is you pick up a joke or something that you didn't realize was there.
Yeah.
So when you get the script and you have my description of, say, Piero, Lucas, the main detective on it, what do you do? What do you focus on first?
I think I'm trying to think back what the description was, how that came through. I think you described the Piero, and I was only basically familiar. I mean, I just have Ronald McDonald in my mind. I'll show you really quickly what I always try and think whenever it comes to the main character. I try and think of the silhouette, so that you'll recognize them in the what do you call it? In the City Crunch, I thought of Laurel and Hardy because you described one as sort of lean, Piero, and I wanted to do something with the physicality of it, whereas the other was almost a bozo, Oliver Hardy kind of character. So basically, I always wanted the lean one to be kind of always, in those what are they called? The almost ballerina shapes.
Okay. That looks good.
He's always looks as if he's always in motion or something. I'm not 100% sure. That's what I had in my mind. Those pre-rolls, because they did a sort of dance, or as they moved, they didn't just walk into a room. It seemed as though they,
The clothes were always very big, make them a little bit pathetic because they're the crying clown, the sadness behind the joke. And
is that crying? Is the crying clown from an opera or something? Or
it's Pagliacci. There's one way he cries at the end. He's laughing to the song and then he cries at the end.
Yes,
we realized that. I won't give it away to people who've never seen it, but there's a sad event happens to him, and he realizes, he's there to make people laugh, but really he's sad. He's broken man, and in the when he's singing it, he breaks down. And this guy here was supposed to be the Piero, who was a little bit worn down by things. He just accepts the status quo. He's an intelligent man, but he realizes he can't make any difference. He's reacting from day to day. In comparison to the other guy who's based on my brother. I have one brother. And you believe me, if you read him, there's only one of him. He's larger than life.
Really?
We were growing up, my brother Frank, if you wanted something, he always had a penknife in his pocket. Or he always had a cigarette lighter, or he always had what you needed. And he never seemed to carry anything, but he just had something in his pocket. So I took that idea of this clown that doesn't say an awful lot. But when you ask him, you got a crowbar in there somewhere, he goes, and takes out a crowbar. Where he's putting this stuff, I don't know, But he's based loosely on my brother. Although my brother would be a bit more talkative,
Maybe for the next issue, I'd really like to do. There's something amazing about that late 19th, early 20th century carnival artwork. Yeah, really beautiful, really, and the old advertisements for circuses and all of that stuff. There's something really lovely about that. Maybe I can spend a bit of time. Because now you're talking about the history of it, like they've come into, they're almost icons in themselves. That Ronald McDonald kind of clown shape. It's like a parody of the original. Just the clown with the makeup and the red nose. And I hate the way the clowns have become just that creepy. That kind of thing.
If you take a clown and take away the music and just freeze frame them, they look very ominous, standing there waiting to do the next thing.
Yeah.
That sort of image has just worked its way into Hollywood,
Yeah.
And they played up to that, like the clown, like Captain Spaulding, was a guy called Sid Haig, and he's one of the most famous. Rob Zombie has him in all of his movies. I think the man's died now, but he was appeared in House of Thousand Corpses and movies like this and Devil's Rejects, and he played this clown, and he's a dirty, perverted, steamy man. And he played up to that kind of image, and but as a clown as well, and that was the kind of thing that I wanted for this day, the serial killer in this thing. Mm. But fun fact, when I was looking for a mad scientist thing, was a guy from Irish Comic News had put something on Twitter that day when I was putting the character together, and he recreated something he'd seen, another picture. It was a thing there people did a couple of years ago where they'd see him a picture and then recreate it at home themselves because it was lockdown. And he recreated this picture with the mask and an apron and a whisk. So the first time we see the killer, it's just like him. Now I asked him, Stephen, is it okay if we use you? He went, knock yourself out, right? So we, you have to thank him for that. But when you first meet the killer, he's totally innocuous. He doesn't say, I expect you to die, Mr. Bond. There's no meat cleavers involved or anything like that, like Sid Haig would. He goes, You awake, lads? Okay, coffee? And he's got a coffee machine on the go. You know, they're in his lair and he says, want some coffee? This man is totally cracked. He's, because of what he's been involved in, dark magic, you know, and the runoff from it. He hasn't protected himself from the magic he's using. And it has affected him physically and mentally. And he's gone through all the layers of psychopathy and he's come out the far side. Now he seems normal. He can function.
Yeah.
But I remember the day I saw this picture, and that's exactly the guy we want. And you recreate it perfect now. I mean, it really was. It was, and he came in. Oh, Stephen's sort of character just does come out to him. You know, it's funny.
There was one part when I was drawing, so you could see the silhouettes. That's what I was kind of going for. I was thinking just the difference, and so that throughout the book you would recognize them. You know, if they were little on a page, you would know who it is just by looking at them. And that's what I was going for. Although with this boy here, I find this really difficult. And this is what I think of when people draw the Joker. I've seen when people draw the Joker. Well, hang on. Let me draw him first. He just Oliver Hardy, really, you know, except that he has a huge wig on, kind of spiky, fun wig, and that's fine. And then, see, I never know how far, because we were talking, do you remember again about cartoony? Yes. How cartoony you go and all of that. And you could go really cartoony with him. Now, he has a big red nose. Here's the thing, though. He's got a mouth, and sometimes he's just chatting. You know, he doesn't say very much, as you said, and sometimes, you know, he's frightened or angry or something like this. But he always has this smile painted on.
Yes, yeah.
And that's tough, you know, because no matter what, you know, if he's doing an expression, but he's got this smile going on. So that was a real challenge. And there's something, there's something difficult that was challenging. And I always think of the Joker, and whenever I think of the Joker these days, I think it's really weird when people draw the Joker this really grotesque, you know, they do really extreme kind of psychopath kind of proportions, you know. He's always that kind of real all the time, you know. There's no, and I think sometimes he's even so beaten up, and then they draw these really big teeth which is hilarious, you know. As if somebody stretched your gums back, your teeth back, that somehow your teeth would grow enormously as well, you know. It's really bizarre, and all one note. And I remember reading Arkham Asylum back in the day and loving it and thinking how great it was. But it's so extreme in the art style. It's difficult to vary. So when people draw the Joker, they draw this real grotesque thing, and it doesn't really change. It's really difficult to have a face that extreme relaxed, or just saying something ordinary or pleasant. It's always up to 11.
Yeah.
Whereas so I wanted to have a resting face with these guys. I didn't want them to be, you know, always extreme. They had to be a relaxed face, so that you can go happy and sad and all of that.
I never realized that. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's weird the way I talk.
You know, I literally now I write something and I go, Jim can do that. You know, not thinking that it's going to torture you to do it. But
I could think about it. I could think of, do you know what, to make it easier for myself, so that I know, like, there's a scene we'll talk about. So maybe we should set up for next week though. There's something we should talk about. There's scenes where there's multiple characters.
Yes.
And the camera's moving in my head. You know, from panel to panel, and you're describing what's happening next. And I'm thinking, okay, we've got to move the camera here to get that in. And then I've got to remember, who's that guy again? Which is the guy? Right, okay. And that comes up, you know, particularly in one scene in our next book. but yeah, it was much easier in these because I'd set down really early on their look. So I could refer, and they're different. The two of them are different, and I know, who they are, what size they are. So that was it's just to help me.
But any pages that are very difficult for you, like that you scratch your head with, oh, I can't do this.
Yes, there is. Let me think of it. So I think it got in the tunnels. When it got in the tunnel, just the part where they're in the car park and they're dismantling the tent and the elephants there, and it's so funny. It's just that real. It's a hoot. I don't know why the tunnels was a real challenge. I think what it was, you got to make it. So let me see. Yeah. So the guys go down into the tunnel. I don't want to give too much away. And Ray, again, I'm really blown away that you think this is amazing. So they go down into the tunnels, and I think you described them in this way. I can't remember, or I just had that, the teenage turtles.
Yeah,
like that's the idea I had in my head. But because the blocks are basically the same, there's no distinguishing features. They're just sort of rectangles, which sounds terrific. Off you go. But just a sense of space of where everybody is in relation to the other, to make sure, because I'm sure to draw it was hard enough, but for somebody reading it and they're in a room, I think, they're in this room with all these cobbled and that kind of thing. Just so that was a challenge to go make this interesting enough. You've got to put stuff in it to make it interesting. Also, to let them know where they are in space, when the camera changes, because they all look the same. That was really challenging. Plus, I remember doing texture on the blocks. I'm thinking to myself, the blocks, thinking, I didn't think you asked me to do that. I just set off. Once I was off on it, I thought I've got to. So whenever you came to ink it, I bet you were cursing me,
Slightly, yeah. But mostly his suit drove me crazy. One Sunday morning here, I kind of went, forget this, And then I realized I have to go back and redraw like 98 panels to make him just a square black and white thing. And I went, no. That's a common mistake people make, though. They put a very exaggerated character to start with belts, the whistles, pouches, and everything else, and then realize I've got to draw 268 of these things. Character design, it's a give and take. How much do you put in? How much do you leave out? Because if you're going to spend 5 years drawing this, it's going to kill you.
You've got to love it. You've got to love it. You've got to be a wee bit in love with it, and a wee bit obsessed as well. Because, as you say, Sunday morning, you've got to, you need to hit the deadline. You've got to get up and draw those cobbles and bricks. Do you know what's going to happen? Someone's going to hit us with a comment or something on the section, and please do, by the way, if anybody's watching, that there's probably a shortcut in Procreate or something.
As far as I know, you can do a brush, and you draw what you need. You make that a brush in Clip Studio Paint, and then wherever you go, whether you're moving away from a focal point or you're moving backwards and forwards, it will fill all that in for you, do perspective and everything for you. It's a lot of setup at the start, but it's literally designing a paintbrush. I saw a guy do it for chains, and this character he was doing had chains wrapped around him and all like Spawn type thing. And he said it took him a while to get this thing right, but now he doesn't have to worry about how these chains are going to look around and draw his figures. He just goes start A to B, and the thing doesn't form. I did it in real time, and he said it cut his day down to next to nothing drawing this character. So everything is there. You can use it, but I don't actually know how to use Clip Studio Paint terribly well. I can lay the pages out, I can ladder, I can ink, I can do a few things, but it's the other people do stuff that's magic, Those kind of things,
I wish we could share with everybody the last panel, because the last 2 pages, because you, as you really like to do, you like to go off on a cliffhanger, but also a wild tease. So you introduce in the last couple of pages some characters. Now we can't spoil them, but
we didn't know
anybody who wants to
do any more of these. I mean, and I said, right, I do 48 pages of the clown story.
Yeah.
And the last 4 pages, like there's 52 pages, I think, in total. The last 4 pages do introduce a whole new element. It's not you got to the last panel and there's a surprise. You've got 4 pages, 5 pages that actually show you what's coming next. And it sets the scene. And that's one of my favorite pages, where these characters burst on the scene and they're there. And you just captured them, I know we were backwards and forwards on the mask kind of thing, the masks of different shapes and stuff. But when it was finished, that's one of my favorite panels. It's very good.
It's but it's a great way to go. Right, here's what we end in, and you must see the next episode. You've got to see the next episode.
Now, I will give away a spoiler for the next one. It starts off on an airship, like a Zeppelin.
A Zeppelin.
Yeah. So you're gonna have to bone up on drawing them and the House of Parliament.
Oh, brilliant! Oh, hang on a minute. Dublin?
No, in London.
In London?
Yeah.
Even better.
It's
Zeppelin. I love that kind of.
It's called,
I'm a real.
The world is just new Victoriana. Queen Victoria, she had only daughters, and they kept a tight hold on London. And London rules England, England rules the Isles, and they rule the world. They don't allow any air travel. They rule the waves. So it starts off on an airship. And
brilliant.
Big Ben plays a big part in it as well.
Really?
Yeah. So you better have a look at that. That'll be down the line now.
Just a horrendous tease. It's just have you? Is the script done? And is it?
The outline is done. I do an outline, then write a short story, see does it actually work, and then I do the actual comic script. Because to go from the short story to the comic strip, some things move very easy.
Yeah.
It's twists, turn, and some things don't translate very well to the comic, and I have to redo that screen, that scene. That might have a knock-on effect, something else. But I admire anybody who can sit down and go, there you go, there's a comic, and just type it all in start to finish. People who can do that, great. I kept the outline of the third one as well. The third one involves the sideways nuns. Yeah, so
See, this is why anybody watching this, look, if you can't pick up on my excitement or the excitement we have for comics, I don't know, we're in the wrong business. It's fun, exciting. You want the next chapter, and that's whenever you get something that draws you in that way, and you just want to get on to the next thing. It's absolutely brilliant. I watched a couple of movies over the weekend. I've never been so bored in all my days. I don't know what it is about these modern movies. Enough with the spaceships and loud punching. It's just so boring and just bored, and guns, and I can almost tell at the beginning, the first couple of minutes, how this is going to pan out, and it's just bored out of my mind.
The next one of the clowns thing is the straight men, and the third part of it is called the punchline, carrying that team through of of
course.
Thanks everybody. Once again, time is beating us. Next week we'll be doing the Talking Gun in depth, and that's such a big one it might take more than one, who knows. So tune in next week or next time. Want to contact us, we're at twopugspublishing.org website. You can buy our books, everything in the Big Bang in Dublin or Dublin City Comics and Collectibles. How about you, Jim? Contact you?
You can contact me on Twitter at Jim Lavery1, on Facebook, Jim Lavery, you'll find me there. I also have blog, Jim Lavery Art at wordpress.com. But Twitter usually, you can get me a Twitter.
Cool. Well, thanks for watching and listening, everybody. And thanks, Jim. It's always a laugh. And this book really had so much fun on this one.
Yeah.
Then we went
Really
on to one that wasn't as much fun. You know, it was a serious monster story. So tune in next time, folks. Okay. God bless, Jim.
Thanks very much. Cheers, Ray. Cheers, everybody.